put to work. Really learning to keep.
It's going to be wonderful.
That's how we roll.
This steam room junk shit too. I don't know.
Okay, that's what so it's actually yeah, but I think it, and then
Oh, I went by. So you live right next to Good. Yeah.
all right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have Dr. Rose going to be joining us about 20 minutes late, and Representative Luria is on her way. But in order to be cognizant of everyone's time and energy, we're going to go ahead and start now. Again, if you're on the sides and would like to join, fill in the seats here. We would love to have you come closer. We had about 90 RSVPs today, but we also realized that with the rain, that makes it challenging. So thank you for all of you who were able to make it. My name is Tanya Ng, and I'm the Vice President for Veterans Education Success, where we focus on supporting military-connected students and ensuring they get access to high-quality education that will kind of help them pave the way into their career field. We do casework, and then we also work on policy and multiple other areas. The GI Bill and other military education benefits have opened up accessibility to higher education for those who might not have otherwise had the chance to pursue a post-secondary education. A congressional report on the return on investment for the first GI Bill showed for every $1 spent, there was a $7 return on investment to the American economy. I often say it is a proactive approach to supporting those who have served our country to help address potential other challenges they might have to overcome. As a first-generation college student, I understand firsthand how their access to these education benefits can help them, as my access to higher education really impacted the trajectory for myself and my family. Today I'm excited to hear directly from these four individuals, well, two right now, and we'll have two more join us, who can share with us about how the access to their education benefits was able to help them end up here, where we're at right now, and be able to represent their constituents and impact for the good their brothers and sisters who have also served. Thank you guys for coming. And I would like to give you both an opportunity to talk. We have Representative Cisneros and Representative Riggleman, and both of them served and then used their benefits and came down this pathway. And so I would like to give both of you the opportunity to share a little bit of your story and how that trajectory went from service into education and then ultimately here to Capitol Hill.
Can you hear me? Yes. So I am Congressman Gil Cisneros. Thank you all for being here. I represent California's 39th Congressional District down in Southern California, encompassing parts of Orange and Los Angeles County, with a little bit of San Bernardino as well too. You know, my education experience is I always say I don't know if it's unique, but it's very interesting in that the Navy pretty much paid for all my education. I was lucky enough to get an ROTC scholarship after I joined and enlisted in the Navy. While I was in the service, I earned my MBA using tuition assistance. And then later on, afterwards, I went back to school and got another master's degree in urban policy using my GI Bill. So it was definitely an interesting experience and something that I'm grateful and thankful for. And it really is part of that, really knowing and understanding what your benefits are. Because I will say, when I got out, the new 9/11, post 9/11 GI Bill hadn't really kind of been taking place yet. It was actually backdated. So when I actually signed up to go back to grad school, I didn't even know I was actually eligible for the GI Bill, because when I left the service, I wasn't eligible for the Montgomery GI Bill. And so it really is a part of one of the things, like I say, it's really knowing what you're entitled to, knowing what your benefits are, and really how you can use those to kind of help you along your educational path, and really knowing when you're at that university or college that you're going to, how they support you, because there's a lot of yellow ribbon money out there too, if you go to the right school, where they'll help supplement your tuition as well. So, but glad to be here today, and look forward to talking about this and answering any questions you may have.
So a fellow Mustang. Yeah. So so I was prior enlisted also. So I pretty similar. I was the oldest of 8 kids actually, born in Manassas, and so when I got done with high school with a sterling 2.6 GPA, but I say, hey, when you skip the last week of high school, it hurts your GPA. But anyway, so got out of high school. I got married really young at 19. So from 19 to 22. Just had successive jobs. Really, college wasn't a big thing in our family, and my parents couldn't afford to send us to college. It was a lot of kids. So got married young, between the ages of 19 and 22, held odd jobs, really didn't think about the military. Then something very profound happened in 1992. I was 22 years old. My wife got pregnant somehow. And I'm like, okay, so we got an issue here. It's time to grow up. So I joined the military, the Air Force. And at that point, I figured maybe it's time for me to capitalize on what I can do. Now, it took a while. This is 92, 93, so I think it took, if I remember correctly, for tuition assistance or GI Bill, I think it took 2 years to be eligible or something like that for the Montgomery GI Bill. I'm trying to remember. But as soon as I was eligible, I went and got 2 associate's degrees, one in avionics from the Community College of the Air Force, and the other one, I tried to pick the easiest degree I can find, the easiest, so I went into political science. So anyhow, so I got these 2 associate's degrees. I'm joking, by the way, but it was easy. But anyway, so I got a pretty high GPA, and at that point, they offered me a SOAR scholarship, Scholarships to Outstanding Airmen for ROTC, which I got. Somehow got into the University of Virginia. At that time, I could double up on my SOAR scholarship and GI Bill, and I had a 3rd kid on the way. When I went to the University of Virginia, and I found out the day we were loading the U-Haul van on our move, on our PCS, that my wife was pregnant again somehow. So, so we had, so it was incredible for me to come from really it was a tough upbringing, great parents and stuff. We didn't have much. To be able to use the GI Bill, I would not be here today. I would not be a congressman. I guarantee you that. And when we talk about the post 9/11 GI Bill, I would not have had the ability to serve in 9/11 as an intelligence officer, to be the first in, to bomb the Taliban, was us with the B-1 bombers, me as an intelligence officer. When you look back on your life and the decisions that you make, I can say unequivocally that without the GI Bill, I don't believe I'd be the person I would be today, and that comes with sacrifice, right? And so it's interesting to hear your story. But being a Mustang was probably the best thing to ever happen to me, and it allowed me to serve. And then I can go on and be an intelligence officer, get selected at NSA, go to Villanova for some of my master's work also. And then I'm able to start my own company in 2007 and sell that in 2012. And all of a sudden, I've gone from my first year on food stamps in 1992, 93, my wife and I made $11,000 a year till we sold our company for millions. And that is direct result of the GI Bill. There's no way to get around it. I don't know how we would have done it. And then of course my wife, 2012, now we own multiple distilleries. My wife wanted to be a whiskey maker. So we were able to leverage that success in the GI Bill into, now my wife is a master distiller and my daughters run all of our business interests. And I go back to being a knuckle drag and wrench turner on C-141s, which is the pride of my life. all the way to today. I think without the GI Bill, I don't know where I would be today, and I can say that with in a profound way and also a completely truthful way.
I love hearing these stories because it's kind of, it crosses all boundaries, right? Like when you talk to students who've used their GI Bill, both of you hit on some things that I thought were really interesting that I kind of wanted to touch on. The first one was knowing about benefits and eligibility. And a lot of times, we were just talking prior to this, that about 50% of students use their GI benefits, but we don't know if the other 50% know that they're even eligible, or like we're trying to figure those out. So you found out from your school what you were eligible for.
Yeah. You know, what happened was I got into this program. It was urban education policy at Brown University, and I was at the orientation, and just somebody there, one of the administrators mentioned about like, oh, if you're going to use your GI benefits, you know, this is what you need to do. And you know, and I didn't really kind of think about it because again, right, when I was in the service, there was the Montgomery GI Bill that was in place, and then I was like, they post-dated it back to 9/11. We had the post 9/11, and I had gotten out in 2004, and just realized, I thought, I wonder if I'm even eligible. So actually, they gave me the website. I went on there, I filled out the application, and lo and behold, yeah, you are eligible. And then once I was eligible for that, it actually really had opened up other benefits that the school had, like the yellow ribbon money, which at a lot of schools goes unused. You know, where there's no veterans there that are applying it, or they may not have a large number of veterans, so that money just goes unused. And so it is something, you know, it's definitely something you want to look at when you're looking to go into your education, really, is what school has a good yellow ribbon program. And if you school, and I will tell you this too, going back, so I did my undergrad here in DC at George Washington University, and because I was prior enlisted, they gave me free room and board. So that is definitely something that you need to look at when you're looking at these schools or where you may want to go, is what benefits will the university give me? You know, it could be, you know, in-state tuition, it could be room and board, you know, there's things out there, and you got to get out there and do your research.
And ask questions. I think that's
Yeah.
really helpful. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry,
We're really glad to have you join us. I'm going to get to your question later, but we would love to have you kind of share a little bit about yourself and your story, using your benefits, your education benefits, and how that's kind of brought you to this point now.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was a little bit late. We've had a little bit of a fluctuation in our vote schedule today. But so my name is Elaine Luria, and like Denver, I'm from Virginia. The district that I represent is all of the coast of Virginia, so Norfolk, Virginia Beach, the Eastern Shore, largest Navy base in the world. And like Gil, I'm a Navy veteran. So I was 20 years in the Navy. I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, and then I served for 20 years as a surface warfare officer and nuclear engineer. So some people look at me like, what's that? So I drove ships, operated nuclear reactors on aircraft carriers, and then towards the end of my career, I was the executive officer of a guided missile cruiser, and then commanded a combat unit of 400 sailors, all the amphibious landing craft on the East Coast that support our Navy Marine Corps amphibious operations. And as far as education benefits, well, I was very fortunate to be able to attend the U.S. Naval Academy, and that's where I got my undergraduate degree. And after that, I participated through the trying to think of what the tuition assistance. Yes, I don't know why I'm having a brain fart in this. But no, so I participated through tuition assistance program to get my master's degree. And fortunately, within the Navy, there are certain educational programs that are counted for college credit and even for graduate credit. So the Navy Nuclear Power Program has done a lot of equivalencies with different universities, both on the undergraduate and graduate level, to provide credits towards graduate education. So I was able to get my master's degree from Old Dominion University in engineering management, and all of my officer power school curriculum counted towards credits for that degree. And so I thought that was a great opportunity, being on active duty, being able to do that. And they had really tailored that towards submarine officers who have really no communication with the outside world when they're deployed. And so I was able to do it while I was on deployment on the aircraft carrier, the Harry S. Truman's first deployment back in 2000. And so I got my master's degree through that program, as did my husband. My husband's story is a little bit different, and he used a lot more of the things that you're talking about. So he came in and enlisted as an E1 as a boiler tech. The folks who used to light the fires in the boilers and the steamships. He said, this is really terrible, I don't want to keep doing this forever. So he was able to become a nuke machinist mate on the enlisted side, go to nuclear power school, and then was picked up for an officer commissioning program, nuke enlisted commissioning program. And the way that works is use of the GI Bill. So he attended Auburn University, used his GI Bill, and was able to get his degree in chemistry there, and then did the same program I did at ODU several years later. And with the post 9/11 GI Bill, this is a little thing that people might not know. If you don't use all of the benefit from your Montgomery GI Bill, there's still some remaining. In addition to the $1,200 that you paid in when you initially enlisted. So when it came time for our son, who attended ODU, to go to college, there was some remaining on his GI Bill, and because of the post 9/11 GI Bill and the transferability to your dependents, he was able to transfer the remainder of his GI Bill to our son while he attended ODU, and then in addition to that, that initial $1,200 at the end that he had paid back in 1987 when he first came in the military, was also, a part of the benefit that he received. So our family has definitely been able to take full advantage of the tuition assistance program, service academy, and GI Bill. So we're very, very thankful for that. And since I served for 20 years in the transferability of the GI Bill, our daughter, who's now 10 and 5th grade, will eventually have the opportunity to use that benefit as well.
That's a great story, and I love that you're touching. Actually, one of the things I was most excited about is looking at your history. I assumed you had used TA on top of going to the Naval Academy, and I think tuition assistance is something people oftentimes overlook or don't think about. The other thing you touched on was also your military training being used as a pipeline for graduate school to kind of help transition, and that's something we've been starting to look at is how when you serve in the military, you get a lot of training, you get a lot of education that actually you can transfer a lot of those even soft skills into credits for degree programs. I used to work at the American Council on Education and did the JST, the Joint Services Transcript, where they make those college credit recommendations. Schools can take it and use it to apply towards degree programs. So yours was similar pipeline without the JST, or did they use your JST?
There was a memorandum of understanding between ODU and the Navy Nuclear Power Program, and because a lot of the curriculum at Navy Nuclear Power School is actually classified, they had actually gone through a process to certify it. And there's other universities as well for specific degree programs, curriculums for specific Navy schools are accepted for certain credits. And ODU is probably one of the most popular for this program for Navy nuclear officers, just because that is already in place in the number of credits that you can take from the nuclear power school.
And that goes back to knowing what's available for you. How about the two of you? Did you have any conversations with school reps about your GI Bill or about your military training and experience?
Yeah, it was very technical. I said, how much money can I get and how fast? And it's amazing when you learn about the GI Bill. It really was, when I learned that those benefits were there, that I started to take advantage of them. And but once I saw it was there, you're like, my goodness, what can I do with this? And I think that's what's so great about service and with the GI Bill. Plus, when you have kids, you got to leverage every single, financial avenue you can get. And like I was saying before, not only did I leverage the GI Bill, I worked as a bouncer, right, to get through, and the shortest bouncer I said in history. And then, but also put in doors, right? So if you guys need a storm door, patio door, entry door, I'm very good at that. So, but I had to leverage every single thing because I had children, right? And paying rent, vehicles, insurance, everything like that. It's just amazing. Again, the GI Bill saved us. I don't think we could have done it without it. And Billy was just asking, can we utilize it? How do we utilize it? How long do I have it for? Can we budget for it and put it in there? So it was a little bit of different probably mindset, coming from the enlisted ranks, as we did, here's Mustangs, and your husband was a Mustang, that's awesome. And doing that and coming there was really, how do I leverage the GI Bill best to function where I can get a degree and just have a little bit better life for my family?
To be honest with you, no. So what I did in the Navy, I was a supply
That's
officer.
the honest answer, yeah.
So they're really, my thing was like, what I did was, I always say, is I did the business of the Navy. I paid our bills. I did all the contracts that we needed there. I did all the logistics, and So when I thought about like what would I do to kind of enhance my career, what I was doing in the Navy, I went and I got and got an MBA using tuition assistance. And yeah, they didn't really take any of my military training.
Military training, yeah.
For the Community College of the Air Force, I don't know if anybody has done that, but the CCAF, they had technical training where they had their own accredited associate's degree. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. I can turn my, fixing HF couplers and foam flex into credits. Just get an easy degree. They didn't take anything.
Really?
So really, yeah, they took a couple like, basic writing or something. So, but yeah, it was sort of scary because I thought I had something there to work on. I think they've improved that since the 90s, but yeah, that was a standalone. It really didn't transition much for me at all.
There's a lot of conversation around that. I know when I used to be a registrar, we as time went on, as I was getting ready to leave, we were accepting more and more of those credits, and we've been talking with schools and trying to help them understand, because if you really look at the content, scope, and rigor of what it is that you're learning, and a lot of it is classified, so you have to, not everything can be translated, but there really is, there's a lot of depth to those courses, and what we found is, when I worked with adult students, if you could give them even like 6 credits or 12 credits, they were like, oh, I'm almost done with a whole semester of college. And then it was like that little initiative to kind of get them moving forward with finishing that degree. So we've heard a lot from you guys. How have you seen it impact your peers as they've been using the benefits, or have they, or?
Well, I could touch on that. As a commanding officer and kind of went up through from a division officer all the way up to having command. And, one of the things that when people talk about the Navy, they always think, well, it's very technical. You're operating nuclear reactors and these complex Aegis weapon systems and things like that. But, truly I saw my time in the Navy as, leading and mentoring and helping people, creating an environment where the people could succeed who were at our command. And consequently, I think our job here in Congress is very similar to that too. And, one of the things I always did as a commanding officer checking in a new sailor was, you've got to think about your personal and professional goals. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be 6 months from now? Get your initial qualifications, get settled at the command, kind of figure all those things out. But where do you want to be in 5 years? And, really making sure that they understood the resources at the Navy College office, that they understood the resources, talking to the financial services officer as well, do financial planning and kind of understand what all of these benefits were that were out there. Do you want to start taking some courses in TA? While the ship's on deployment, do you want to take some classes on board the ship on deployment? Because, on an aircraft carrier, there are a certain number of college classes that would be offered through NC PACE. They would have instructors come on board, so people would get their basic credits. And, people had different areas of motivation. Some people are, I want to stay in the Navy for 25, 30 years. My goal is to be a command master chief, and, I'm focused on that, and they didn't see the college part as part of it. But some people truly came in with the perspective that I'm coming in the military because I want to, learn, have these experiences, serve my country, but, I know that these benefits are there, and I do plan to separate at some point and go to college, and so they would be very focused on kind of what that path was for them. And then you'd have the sailor who, the day before they were getting out, and you would ask them, what are you going to do next? You'd always hear like, oh, I'm going to move back to Oklahoma and go to college, and you could really tell there wasn't much of a plan there. So you would encourage them to take those materials they'd gotten at transition assistance, make sure they knew where they were, where to find all that information when they were actually ready to use it. But I think that's one of those things that's challenging, and we talk a lot about the transition assistance process, TAP, they now call it GPS. And I'm both on the MILPERS subcommittee on armed services, where transition assistance on the DoD side is located, and I'm on the VA subcommittee for economic opportunity. So that's the VA end of it. So it's kind of the before and after, both ends of the transition assistance program. And I think one of the roles there is making sure people really do get good information. So when they separate, they understand what those benefits are and how they can use them, how they can access them, and find those resources.
You are few and far between of people that could actually take the time to work with your sailors on those issues. That's huge. That's big for them.
Yeah. No, I had a chief petty officer that worked for me. And, it was interesting. He has a great story because he really got it and started just taking classes, and it's like he never stopped. And he's got like 2 master's degrees already, and it's really evolved, and he used every benefit that he could think of, whether he was on active duty, tuition assistance, and he used his GI Bill, and he just kind of kept on going. But it really is, if you take this opportunity in what you have and really kind of understand what it really is a way to kind of change your life, like, kind of like Denver did, and like kind of like me. I mean, I was the first in my family as well to go to college, and nobody in my family had ever gone to college. Nobody ever really thought about it, and it really has kind of changed the trajectory of not only me, my siblings, my children, my nephews, and it's just really taking this opportunity to go out there and to use the benefits and really understanding what's out there for you. It's just an incredible opportunity that you should all make sure that you use.
Yeah, for me, I mean, when you're enlisted with a bunch of cats, we had when I went to UVA, we had a guy who was a Michigan State police trooper. He went from being enlisted, he always wanted to be a cop. So he went to MSP in Michigan, and I'm down in Virginia, and all of a sudden he goes, "Listen, Dan, I think I want to go to college, and use my GI Bill." And this guy, and I love him, and I never thought in a million years would he go to college but get a degree. I thought number one, he'd go to jail, or number two, he's what we would call, he was a smart, ASS his whole life. So anyway, but this guy just completely buckled down, and now, he goes and gets his bachelor's degree in his 30s, right, or later, goes overseas, got a job, National Security Agency with my company, comes back with this education, and goes over and he's doing DNA analysis for special operations. He's doing telephony analysis, doing pattern of life, social network analysis, and he moves over. Now he's the head of a department of all fraud for one of the largest insurance companies in the country. And you look back on this, and listen, I actually get emotional about my friends when I do this stuff, and to see how he changed his life. Now he's in his 40s. I know I don't look 49. It's tough, I know, but he's he's my age with two younger kids. Thank God mine are 27, 26, and 22. And he has completely changed his life. GI Bill. And it's just, I just think people who have really used the GI Bill to that effect, and they can go back and tell those stories, it's a fantastic thing. And I think about him a lot. The fact and there's just so many other stories of people enlisted, got out, and said, "Oh wait, I got this GI Bill thing. I can use this." And I think that's what's so amazing about those stories.
Going back to school as an adult, right? Even if you're not the traditional 18-year-old student, there's different, I guess, challenges that might come with it. As you were navigating that process, what were things you felt worked well for you, and what were things you felt could have been better?
I think actually going to school as an adult was a lot better than it was when I was like, 20. Doing it like in my 30s I was a lot more serious. I mean, when you're in your early 20s, let's face it, right? You're thinking about, okay, what fun am I going to go do on the weekend, and what's coming up, and everything. And sometimes studies kind of become secondary. So unless you're at the Naval Academy, where that's all you guys can do. But no, I think when as an older student, I took it a lot more serious, and I was a lot more focused, and I worked a lot harder than I think I did when I was younger. And it's kind of like a different thing. I think if I went to college at 18 years old, I don't know if I would have made it or would have survived. So I think kind of having a little break there kind of made me kind of focus there. And as I got older, I just kind of really focused more on those studies. And I think, it's never too late to go back to school. That second master's degree I got, I went back to school in my 40s and got it. And so it's something you're never too old to go out and get that education. But it was a different experience. I was used to pen and paper, taking notes in a pad. When I went back, in the 2000s, everybody had a computer in the class, and most people weren't actually typing notes; they were actually searching the internet. But it is, you're never too old to go back, and I think kind of having that wisdom, some years behind you, kind of really helps you focus a little bit more.
So at 18, it's interesting you said that. I got fired from Sizzler Steakhouse, and for eating shrimp out of the all-you-can-eat shrimp bowls. I wasn't ready for college at that time. And got fired from Shoney's twice. When I was, it's true. My book, right? No, Elaine. I don't want to talk about that. I'm a prodigious author. And I just learned the word prodigious. When I was going to school as an adult, I remember two things vividly. So I did play a little college football at some time, but I got to UVA and I'm 27 because I was on the 10-year program for college. But I got to UVA at 27, and there's two things I remember. You know, I'm married with two kids, one on the way. I'm sitting in German class at UVA, and there's a female sitting next to me, and she goes, "Hi, you know, you look like a party animal, right?" And I'm like, "What?" You know, and she goes, "We got this huge party night. I bet you could drink a full keg of beer." Now, do you take that as a compliment or not? I don't know. I'm like, "What do I look like?" You know, so I had to turn that down as a married individual. So I know that you're more responsible, but it's very sad. I think the other thing too. I have a different look at it here as an Air Force guy, right? So, but the other thing too is I got invited. I was at the gym one day, and I still did powerlifting competitions and stuff. So I was at the gym, and I was in a class, like an engineering class. Well, not really engineering. I can't do math, but it was a class that was hard for me. So maybe it was political science. Anyway, so I had somebody come over. He goes, "Listen, we just saw you bench pressing." And I said, "Okay, thanks." He goes, "We really want you to do something." I'm like, "What?" And they had this whole group of males and females, all incredibly attractive, you know, so they're all in the gym. Like, "We want you to be a cheerleader for the University of Virginia." And I'm like, "Holy cow, that sounds like a great job." So I went to my wife. I'm like, "Honey," I said, "they asked me to be a cheerleader. I'm 20. I could be a cheerleader." And she goes, like throwing up girls in the air and stuff? I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Absolutely not." So I have a little bit different experience, you know, but I ended up being number one out of my ROTC class and graduated with distinction. And I think there is something to go to school at an older age, but I do feel like not going at a younger age, I probably would have failed out, but I think I missed on an incredible experience going at a younger age. That's what I would like to say as we go forward here.
You should have sold it. You should have sold it to your wife as scholarship money if you're on the cheerleader.
You don't think I tried? She's like, "Absolutely, I don't care what you have to do. You're not doing it."
You actually touched on something that we've had a lot of conversations around, which is you were on the 10-year plan. And I think that that's not uncommon with adult students, and especially those who are serving, whether if they're using the TA and they get deployed or they get stationed elsewhere, and as you see online education kind of shifting and evolving, that might change slightly. But I feel with a lot of life experiences that's not uncommon. But the way that graduation rates currently are, they're focused on the 6-year traditional student. And so in your case, it's not really a question, it's more something I'm highlighting. It's like you wouldn't have considered having completed.
You can't. It's hard to imagine that you would be graduating at 28 from the University of Virginia. You know, and I had to get multiple associate degrees. I had to learn, sort of teach myself to be a little bit more disciplined. And you know, Elaine does know me very well, so she understands this. So, but it really was a learning experience for me on what I needed to do to actually succeed. And again, it goes back to you have to have the resources to do it. And the sacrifice for your country, the service to your country allows you to do that. And I think, and if you look at the individuals up here, we had to go through it to get it. And I think that's the great thing about the GI Bill and service is that you do feel like you earned, you know, those stripes going forward, and then you're proud to give back, and you see the example of that up here.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to open it up to questions from anyone in the audience. I have a couple more if none of you have questions, but I want to give you an opportunity to also ask questions.
Sizzler.
There's a lot more good stories.
Oh, there's
I know, I feel like we could bring out a bunch of stories.
There's stories. Oh, there's stories.
So I guess my next question for you, while you're thinking of, I usually have candy and I throw it at people, and that usually gets them to engage. But we do have happy hour and food after, so questions are we'll pay you back later. Yes.
So what do you think going into college as a veteran and having had that very different world experience, what would you say were positives of that experience, and what do you think made you feel very other or different than you did in the traditional college setting?
Yeah, so I think being that age and wearing a military uniform once a week, it was interesting that I had some positive outcomes from that, but I had some negative outcomes. You know, 98, you know, you'd think, you know, it was 21, 22 years ago. but you still had this sort of conservative liberal bent, one way or the other. And it was interesting to be wearing the uniform at times like, oh, wait a minute, you're military, or, oh, cool, you're military. And it's navigating that. And I just found it interesting, and even some of the classes in philosophy, or if you took classes like that, right, it was really interesting because at 27, 28 years old, they're talking about Kierkegaard, or I didn't give a rat's, right? I just didn't care, they're like, well, or Foucault, right? Or I think I said that right. Pretty cool, huh? I knew that. Right, so, and you have philosophy, you have these classes, and they get deep into philosophy, and I'm wearing my uniform, and they're asking, well, what do you think if you compare and contrast, Hegel with Kierkegaard? And the first thing is like, this does nothing for me, right? But once you start to dig into it, it actually does. And I think what I had to get over was the fact, it was my fault. I think that I thought I was, too old for this crap. But what I came to is I started to learn. And I think at my first no-kidding semester was the worst, because I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm not going to take philosophy or, Central Asian economies. Kill me, right? I don't care about Tajikistan, right? But all of a sudden I found out that I needed to learn a lot of cool things. And then I actually got smarter. I think the fact is I thought I was mature about it, but I wasn't. And I know it's a hard, because what am I doing, 19-year-olds? They don't know anything. I've served, I've been in 3 major operations, right? I got kids, I've changed crap diapers, I know everything, right? And what you found is you didn't. And I think that was my biggest thing, was learning how to actually be a good student, thinking that I knew everything and I didn't. And I know it's a little bit opposite, but that was the hardest thing for me, was humbling myself to learn, because I didn't really think I needed to do that.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of the same thing, right? It really is, when you go back, you're going to be a little bit older than a lot of the people that are in your class or your cohort. And it really is about kind of, tearing down that wall and really like engaging them and really, learning from them. And at the same time, they're going to learn from you, because, even at their young 20s, they already probably have ideas in their head of how things are and what it's like, or how it used to be. And I engaged with a lot of my classmates that I had, and I would, not all the time, but I would kind of go out with them and have a drink, just to kind of build that relationship and really just get to know them, and they get to know me. And I actually have, a good group of friends that are still like good friends of mine today from when I went back to grad school. That, they're a lot younger than me, but it is. We built that relationship. We tore down that wall. We learned from each other. I shared my experiences with them. They kind of told me like their vision of the future, and really, but it was something that we can build on, and it was a great experience. And so I encourage you, like, don't, think like, oh, I served in the military. I did this. I was that. What am I going to learn from them? Because you can learn stuff from them, and it is important, I think, to kind of go out and engage them and really kind of get to know your classmates.
Well, I went to the Naval Academy when I was 17, and I'm not sure that I wanted to start plebe summer when I was 27 or 28. So.
I love the diversity of experiences here. I think it's really, I think it's more accurate of what you see within the military and within veterans. And
Well, Lane at 17, there's no way I would have done it. I couldn't have got through it. I'd have left. I'd have been bored, or I would have been overwhelmed, or I would have ran away. Right? I know where I was at 17, and I still wanted to drive fast cars and,
Yeah.
steal shrimp.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I'd love to hear how you picked your schools for education.
Oh.
If you got any assistance from the military or otherwise through that process.
Yeah.
Well, for my master's degree for ODU, it was a very widely known and commonly accepted program to do for the master's, because this groundwork had been laid specifically for the Navy nuclear power program to be able to get those credits. And I think it's unfortunate to some degree on active duty, because it's sort of a requirement and expectation for officers to have a master's degree by a certain point. And I never really wanted to go to shore duty. I didn't want to go to postgraduate school in Monterey. I didn't want to just go to a program where I went to in resident, graduate school. I just wanted to keep doing operational things. So my first 5 tours, The first roughly 12 years I was in the Navy, I hadn't done any shore duty yet, and I come up on this point of, you need to have a master's degree. And so it was during that process of, being at sea and doing operational things that I went ahead and did my master's degree during that time as a lieutenant. And it was just a great opportunity that this program had accepted so much of the credit I had done at Navy's Nuclear Power School, and then I was able to do it remotely because it had been designed basically for people to be able to do it on deployment. So that was really an easy choice. There were lots of other choices, options out there. There was the SWO, Surface Warfare Officer MBA program, so people would go to Kellogg or Harvard, and there's a select number of people who get picked for really high-level university programs. But I just wanted to stay operational and be on ships, and that's what I did. My first 5 tours, and so it was good to be able to do the master's degree and continue to do that.
So that's a good question, and I think it's a very important question. When I did my MBA program, I did it somewhere where it was convenient for me, and kind of like a program like you. It was set up for people that were on active duty, so you can complete the program. And I got an MBA from Regis University, which is in Denver, and I was never in Denver, except for when I went to go get my diploma, right? And that was convenient for me because when I was on active duty. A thing that I learned later on, right, and some people may disagree with me, but sometimes when it comes to grad school, it is important where you're going to go, and especially if you're going to do a certain type of program. And I learned, really for an MBA, you want to go to like one of those top elite schools, if you can do that. So when I went back to school again, I kind of looked at like specific programs to kind of fit like a need of what I wanted to do and where I could do that. And really that's how I ended up at Brown, because I found this program in urban education, which was somewhere I wanted to kind of take my career going in that area. And it was a well-recognized program. It was at a prestigious university, and it's something that it's important, and I think that it's going to be something that kind of going later on into your career. It is an important decision of where you do go and you get that graduate degree from.
Their decision matrix was a lot more complex than mine. Any Virginia Tech Hokies in here? Okay, I can tell the story. No, I'm kidding. So I was actually probably one of the only high school people that got deselected from a college. Virginia Tech, I actually got accepted to Virginia Tech out of high school, but when I skipped the last week of college to go high school to go whitewater rafting, my GPA fell by 0.7, and I got deselected from college. So anyhow, why did I go to UVA? It's bizarre. My dad was an electrician at UVA. He had left when I was young, and when he came back in my life, he worked the midnight shift at UVA. So, and at that point, that's actually where I learned to box. My dad in the elevators would push the emergency button and teach me to fight. Great dad. And then just incredible. And then that's where we learned, that do not throw toilet paper off of like a 12-story building and hit somebody because it hurts, right? And they're angry with you. So I went to UVA and I did the night shift with my dad at UVA all the time, right? And also, do not fake out somebody with a napkin with peanut butter. They hate that. Anyway, so all this stuff that I learned at UVA, but my dad, one night, we were working, he goes, son, and he just looked at me, and he had just come back in my life. He goes, I don't want you to work here. I want you to go here. And I remember, I was 1982, right? I started going to U-Haul. I was watching Virginia basketball games. I'd never been in any college environment. You flash forward, there was no way I was going to get into UVA. They made me retake my SATs at 25. I had to study the Princeton Review book, if you guys, that Princeton Review book. And I actually scored really well on my SATs. My wife goes, that's so cool, honey. See what you can do when you study? Good boy. Good boy. So I picked UVA because I thought it was impossible, and got in. And it was just one of the most amazing things that my dad was at my graduation. It's pretty cool.
There's a question. I want to highlight something really fast, though, and I think each of you are showing this, is that as you look at research, it shows that military-connected students as a whole do better than their peers in higher education. And it's like hearing you guys talk about that, you're just substantiating what research has shown us in the past. Jesse?
So Tanya, I was Jesse O'Connell, Laguna Foundation. So I was really struck by Revelera's comments about how she's a nuclear trained officer, and that only got her partway to this graduate degree, right? Like the learning that she gained in service was not being fully captured. So I'm just curious if the members have experienced as you've gone back in, like, do you think the learning that you got in the service is being adequately captured by the post-secondary system, or have you heard from those that served under you or served with you about kind of these challenges of really giving our service members the appropriate head start in gaining a civilian credential?
Well, Jesse, thanks for the question. A disclaimer, Jesse and I actually did a program together at UVA a few years ago, so we've known each other for a couple of years here. And I think that the military's gotten a lot better at that. And I think that it's not uniform across all of the services. Denver mentioned earlier the Air Force Community College. I think they have a more established program that leads to a degree. The Navy recently did a report called Education for Sea Power. I know that they're looking at establishing a command of the Navy Community College under the president of the Naval War College in Newport. And so they're looking to roll out and implement some new things under the leadership of the new acting secretary. I'm not sure what momentum that still has, but actually acting secretary Modley was the one who was kind of spearheading that. So I expect it to still be on track. I think it's a balance from looking from the armed services side and from the military personnel side. What is the goal of the training that you give on active duty service members? I mean, I think the goal is still to give them the skills they need to do their job in the military to make you combat ready and to perform those functions. But I think that, people should also gain the benefit of that training if it is equivalent to college level courses. So I think there's a lot of work left to be done to make sure that credentialing of that, education happens. And I think that, soldiers, sailors, airmen can walk away from their military service with more documented credits than they currently have, and we can continue to improve that. And something we haven't talked about at all here so far is military spouses and their benefits as far as education is concerned, the challenges that military spouses have when trying to pursue education when their service member moves frequently, and being able to transfer those credits, and the different tuition assistance related programs for military spouses that are out there. So those are all things that we're focusing on within the military personnel subcommittee. And
I am.
yes, we are both on that, and we're both on economic opportunity.
No, I'm not on that one.
Okay, so if I recall, sorry, there's 3 of us though that are on MilPERS and economic opportunity, where I mentioned that's kind of both the DoD and the VA side of the equation with transition assistance in these education programs. So I know that Mark Bergman is also on that as well, a Republican counterpart. I'm trying to think of the third person, but there are 3 of us, and I think that that's a valuable fact that you have people on both sides of that equation serving on the committees where these things are fleshed out. So I'll stop there. I could keep going.
No, I love that you brought up military spouses, because there's also a lot of concern with military spouses where, as a teacher, they get licensed in one state and then they move to another state and that license is no longer recognized. And so you look at underemployment for military spouses as they're transitioning from one state to the next, and the challenges that you're facing with credentialing and licensures translating across the board, and how much money we're spending. We're going to do one more question and then we're already over, so we'll end at that point.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights. I'm Linnea Giesel and I work at Georgetown University overseeing their Veterans Office. And I'm curious to know, were there individuals on campus that understood what it meant to be a military-connected student and assisted you throughout your time on campus or going through the program?
Good.
Well, Old Dominion University is located about 3 miles from Naval Station Norfolk, which is the largest naval base in the world, and probably 40% of the student population is either active duty or former military, so I think it's really kind of ingrained in the culture there. And you would probably find that at any university that's in a fleet or military concentration area. So I mean, my answer was yes, and they specifically have geared everything down to how the registrar's office understood that you were in the military, and that tuition assistance is how your tuition was being paid. So it was very integrated on a campus like that. And I could see how that would be significantly different from one where you had a much smaller, military or veteran population.
Yeah, so when I did my undergrad at GW, they understand there was actually a lot of individuals that were going there working on their master's degree programs and grad school there. And so they understood. When I was at Brown, Yeah, not so much. They had just hired, when I started there, they had just hired an individual to handle like veterans, veteran students. And really all it just kind of starting out, it was just basically, she would throw lunch like once a month just to kind of like to meet people and kind of find out who they were. And there really wasn't a history of really trying to recruit veterans there. And I think unfortunately a lot of the IVs have kind of been like that. But hopefully that's changing now. They got that program going. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think a lot of schools, especially like when you think like those highly selective ones, they need to really kind of start focusing on their veterans, because that's a good talent pool that they have there to kind of bring those people in.
Yeah, at UVA, I mean, I was the oldest there. I had one other sort of peer group, 6 months younger than me. So we had to link up, and really, it was sort of awkward. But we did have one instructor who was a Mustang who went prior enlisted to officer. It was sort of us three. He was a captain, we were going through it. But as far as that, the colonel, tried, but we really almost had to go native, right, to try to, and really it wasn't a huge, Det 890 at that time wasn't huge, in our class probably 20 or 30. So, but being the oldest there was a little bit interesting, but really it was having an instructor who was a Mustang at that point, who we could sort of mentor us through that, that really got us through. So it was trying to find the right people to do it, but there was really no infrastructure, because it was a pretty small Det class, and and I was as old as salt, out there.
So I want to ask one more quick question, if that's okay with you guys, and it's just really what's next. We've done a lot with Forever GI Bill, and how that went, what we did with that. You guys moved the 4625 out of the House this in December, and what are you looking at? What's your priority over this next year?
Well, it's funny you ask, because we just did a legislative hearing today in Economic Opportunity Subcommittee, and I've introduced a piece of legislation with ranking member on that committee, Mr. Bilirakis, and this is something that I've actually heard from schools, from universities, is that there's not the right information out there for people who are looking at what school to attend to tell them specifically what the outcomes of veterans are at those schools. So you can't look and say, I want to go to this school, and then figure out, well, what percentage of veterans who attended this school were successful in completing, what was the average time to complete, how much did they spend to get their degree, and kind of then what is their career success. So this is an initiative that we're putting forward that would link both the Department of Education, the VA, and the IRS to be able to provide sort of, what is the income result? If you get a degree in computer technology from this particular community college, or a degree in computer science from this school, what do other people who've gone this path, earn? What can your career salary expectations be? And it's a lot of data, and I think it would take time to implement and collect all of that data, but there is a decision tool that the VA has. I just think that the information there is incomplete in helping people make those decisions, and it would be better to be able to have some of this in post-graduation employment data from the IRS and Department of Labor available to students in helping make that choice. So I'm working on that piece of legislation, and there's a lot of others that we have out there kind of in the hopper related to these topics, but that one is so new, fresh off the press. The legislation's still in draft as well. So I have one of my LAs here, Dominique, and then we have Monica in our office. We actually have a fellow from the VA this year in our office, so that's a great resource. And if you have ideas on this, or if you're working with anyone working on similar related issues, please bend their ear, because it's still in draft form, the legislation, and we're just really working to make sure that's a good product that helps veterans make those college decisions.
So we introduced a bill this past year called the Break Pay Bill, and let me just kind of explain a little bit about what this is. So I had met a veteran going to college who was sleeping in his car, which is unacceptable. And so when I was talking to these people, they were telling me this thing about how they would go, like when the semester ends in the fall, if the semester ends like December 2nd, after they're done taking their finals, that's you're beat up in January. But the landlord still wants his rent money, right? He doesn't prorate your rent. So the break pay bill basically would, if you're still enrolled in school, would allow you to collect the full, stipend, the BAH for both those 2 months, for December and January, during the Christmas break. It's something we're working on. We got to figure out a way to pay for it. But it is something that I think we need. We shouldn't really kind of send people out on the street, especially because of a break in semesters around at school. Another thing that we want to do, that we're going to look at, is something that I heard in different testimony, was that really giving those that are going to school right now in the GI Bill more internship opportunities during the summer. To really kind of, a lot of them were talking about how they had to do it only within the VA. It should be open up to other departments within the government and allow you to really kind of hopefully focus on and what you're majoring in college. And so that's something we're kind of working on right now.
Yeah, there's a center called the Southern Virginia Higher Education Center. I believe that's down near Danville, Virginia, North Carolina border. And I went down there, and it's a center that they brought a bunch of discounted classes to go. Yes, yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah, so Elaine. So which is fantastic. And what we found is that the SVHEC wants to make sure we leverage stuff that we did with the NDAA. I went down there to talk to them, and they weren't allowed to use the GI Bill because they were in a consortium of multiple community colleges and one four-year university, and for some reason, veterans couldn't use their GI Bill for those discounted classes. And I was trying to figure out what that loophole was, so that's something that I'm working on. The other thing is, what we're trying to push is advanced manufacturing trades and vocational training. How far can we go with the GI Bill in this direction? I think it's worthwhile to say if there's a welding course, and maybe it's already there. I don't know, because I haven't used the GI Bill in a while. But for welding or advanced trades, TIG welding, whatever, can we use the GI Bill for that in the future for trades and things of that nature? That's something I've been looking into. I told them that I would, and I'll work with the committees here. But I've been looking at, can we do these things for these consortium of classes that are trying to discount, utilizing, leveraging teaming with other colleges, and also in the advanced manufacturing space.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much for coming today and for sharing with us. Thank you. All right, we're going to have a reception with food and drink, so help yourself. They're supposed to be here now, I guess, to set it up. So in 2 minutes, it should be all set up. So.
Thank you so much.